I'm going to invite everyone to take a nice deep breath, please. All right. I want to welcome you and thank you so much for joining me for this majestic time. I really want to speak to your emergence and why it's important during this time, especially those of you who are still subscribing to being chosen ones, and why it's time for you to wake up and sovereign up and actually stop going down the chosen one's purpose path. And the reason why it's time to really wake up and sovereign up, because you've reached a point in your evolution, and I've talked about this in previous segments, where even if your reality doesn't seem to be matching your evolution at this point, it is simply because there's the subtle yet significant shift that needs to be made. And honestly, shifting is probably not the accurate language because I already believe that you're there. So it's more of an awareness because the longer you stay in the chosen one's purpose path, so to speak, the more you realize that it's actually a trap. And so I want to expound upon this during our time because it's really important because of the juncture that you are not coming up on, but you are already there. This is the new juncture of your journey. And most of you have been looping consistently. You have been doing all of the things that you feel divine guidance has provided you with, and you've actually tried your own way of doing things. And even with the combination of that, it just seems like nothing is really happening or taking place. And that within itself is an illusion because there are several things that are taking place, especially under the radar. And most of you are familiar with how Chinese bamboo grows, that there's a deep root system that's being cultivated underground, and you don't see anything for the first 4 years. But in the fifth year, it springs up. And also the iceberg effect. Most of you are familiar with how there's the tip of the iceberg, but underneath there's so much. But now it's actually time that your iceberg is going to come to surface. But you yourself are going to be in a completely different trajectory. It's going to be almost like what you feel you've been prepared for becomes a small fraction of the greater expansion. And that can be hard to wrap your mind around because typically you think whatever I've been going through and I've been developing for, this is what my greater purpose is. But it's a very small fraction, very small component of how it fits into this much more expanded life that you're actually here to live. So I've been talking in previous segments about the continuous looping around and how this becomes a trap. And I want to give a disclaimer to clarify for those who actually are teaching others about being chosen and those who have chosen one's channels and you are empowering others. And I commend you. And you are doing an excellent job. And so what I'm going to say moving forward is not to attack those channels or influencers or to make them wrong for what they're doing. No, where the responsibility lies in terms of the waking up and the sovereign up is for those of you who have been ready to shift. Those of you who are continuously tuning into the chosen one's content. And you're finding that you're consistently tuning in. And then you, again, are applying what is being suggested. And at one point in your journey, that served you. But you've actually evolved. You've been evolved way longer than you realize. Okay? You have. And because you haven't caught up with the evolution of who you truly are. A sovereign one, a majestic sovereign one. So your wake-up call to become aware so that you don't continuously keep going down that road. Because I've talked about in previous segments how when you keep tuning into that content, the content is very empowering for sure, and it gives you hope. But the content continuously is the same content. And what I mean by that, there's different levels of how the chosen one's content is being focused on. So there are the channels or influencers, the podcast or blog, so to speak, a strand that really focuses on illuminating to you how special you are and why your life is going the way it is, why people come against you, and why those who have come against you, why they're going to pay significantly. And then it keeps taking you back into something that may be dealing with a past life or just something that's not more present in a sense. And again, as I'm sharing this, I am not knocking this content. But let me move forward. So there's the strand again that every time the influencer shows up, there's going to be something new about your enemies are going to pay. Someone's launched an attack against you. Somebody's losing their mind. They shouldn't have stepped to you. And because you're a chosen one, this is why this is happening to you. Because you have this gift, you have this anointing, right? So that's a strand. And then there's another strand that continuously moves the needle a little bit for you in terms of you getting closer to an outcome where there's another test, another something, which is not allowing you to really feel and be into your already more than enoughness and enough to be serving in some capacity of this greater expansion as the next iteration of that narrative starts to play out. So the moment you think that you are on the verge of a breakthrough and things are opening up and they're expanding for you, then there's something that comes up to sort of throw it back to you that, but if you don't do this, you're going to miss this, even though you've been doing all the other things. It's a resiliency trap, if you will, that has you believing that you are really preparing and developing for a specific outcome that you're not even aware of what that could possibly be. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that what's being presented is in error. It is just not accurate for you at this time. So the trap is not that it's a trick and a trap. It becomes a trap for you when something that was good and great for you at one point and aligned now becomes sort of a detriment to your expansion. So it's not the channels and the content. And I just shared like two strands. There's others. So it's not the influencers or those channels themselves that are the problem in a sense, because they are helping and empowering other people who actually need that content during this time. But for you, because you were here to gain expanded awareness about yourself, develop now in next level comprehension so that you can ultimately start to carve out your own lane. And even though there are some of those channels or content, podcasts, so to speak, blogs that are encouraging you to sort of be a pioneer. Now, that's something that I teach a lot about is you start to pioneer your own new way. But the trap comes when there's the awareness around that, the encouragement, but then yet there's the drawback to that. So again, it is your responsibility to wake up at this point, but not just wake up, because you don't need to wake more up in this chosen one template, because that particular trajectory will keep you always in testing, always getting close. The appearance of breakthroughs, and yes, something's opening up, but then there is still the continuous loop. And then to keep you in, there's the, how can I say it? What's thrown into the mix, I should say, is as you are progressing, is that, well, if you check out now, if you stop now, you're going to lose all of what you've been building up for. So there's always this final thing. If you pay attention, there's the content that here you're got a great purpose. You've got this big financial trajectory. And all of this is accurate. It is. But if you continuously are tuning into that content, believe it or not, it's de-evolutionizing you. It's disempowering you because there's something new every day. And you may think you need that. And that content is there to serve individuals at different levels. So you have to be discerning. It's just like how the Bible says, test the spirit by the spirit. Every word is not for you. Every revelation is not for you. But one of the things that you have to pay attention to is if you find yourself consistently ready for the next video, or another channel's got this, another, and you're just in the web at this point. And even though the content may be encouraging you to spend more time with God, to be more connected, to not be on social media as much, it's interesting that's brought up, but there's a new video every day, or a new podcast segment or blog or so every day, still reeling people in, because you have to remember, when you follow or you subscribe to content, this is why I'm going to say this, why I particularly like to do, or feel more guided to do, series about specific focuses. Because once a series is rendered, it lays the fundamentals for individuals to now take what they learn from that and start to move forward, start to evolve. So again, the responsibility is up to you. And as I mentioned before, I'm not making the other influencers or channels, I'm not making them wrong. What I'm saying is that you have to wake up and realize that that's a continual progression. And if you go back and look through content on certain platforms, you're going to see there is a consistent pattern of producing the same types of content. And of course, they have to stay consistent. They have to stay relevant. But even the most empowering content can sometimes still be a little bit fear-based. So as you wake up and you realize that this is what's continuously happening, and not moving into the fear in terms of, well, wait a minute, if I don't do this one last thing, if I don't do this, I'm going to miss something. I'm going to miss it. That's a template. That's a perspective. But what is God actually saying to you? Now, one of the things I know to be true of the times that we're in, individually and collectively, but for this group here, is it is time for you to reign. It's time for you to be in your royal priesthood authority. It is time for you to sovereign up. I don't want to say suck it up and sovereign up, but basically it's you have to wake up, and it is time to sovereign up. It's time to come in your sovereignty. It is time to come into alignment with this evolutionary truth, and now start to create and divinely design your life accordingly for this next phase. You have to already be in your I am enoughness, because in the I am is the I am present moment and presence. All right. When you come into your higher ranking, in a sense, your royal priesthood authority, you are not consistently, not even by God, by source, being always given this test and this challenge. When a king or queen sits on their throne, they're in rulership, in a sense, to now use the divine wisdom to help govern a kingdom. doesn't mean that they're not met with challenges or different things. It's a part of the experience for expansion, for evolution, but they are not consistently under initiation because that has passed. That's a very old paradigm, even in development. And so if you don't wake up to realize, and it's up to you, you have graduated, but you believe you haven't graduated because it doesn't seem like things have really shifted and things have really changed. But it's not so much about an external reality that is presenting something different to you. It is really about, have you truly embodied and embraced who you are? And to no fault of your own, because there's not a lot of teachings in terms of you actually shifting from that mindset. Because there's a lot of those teachings that try to actually bring sovereignty and standing in your own power and your truth within these different frameworks. But because there are different levels to this way of expansion, you have to have the discernment to navigate where you are. And so getting out of the trap, out of the loop, again, is your responsibility. But you have to be aware that something great for you at one stage may not be. That whether it's a diet, whether it is a certain spiritual practice. Now, I've done many talks over the years about how rituals and routines can either reward you or ruin you. And the reason why this is important is because we are not meant to be on autopilot. We are not meant to be living life by just default. We are supposed to be intentional about our living and creating by divine design, not just by design. Because sometimes when you're creating your life by design, that's, kind of one of those cliche empowerment statements or so is we've heard over the years is that you don't want to create your life by default. You want to create it by design. Well, whose design? Whose design? You want to create it by divine design, something that is accurately aligned for you. And the reason why this is important, the more that you sovereign up, is because what you will begin to realize is that, especially within the chosen one's path, or any type of label, so to speak, that has been out there over the years, is these are sort of set premises with characteristics of what this level contains. And that's why most fall into that. You're like, I'm a chosen one. And because I'm a chosen one, here are the characteristics of the life that I live based on this template. And here's what I'm supposed to be moving into based on this template. This is why I take individuals and processes, whether it's books and publications, programs, or however, through an evolutionary metamorphosis consistently. Because everything will not always jump off the same origin in evolution. And you have to realize this. When you move into sovereignty, it is more of your individualized expression. That's why I've talked about in other segments where as you go through this unique metamorphosis, you really lose the labels. But if you feel the need to have something to identify with, again, it needs to be in sovereignty. And yes, sovereignty has a premise for sure. And there are many teachings and schools of thought on what it means to be sovereign. Now, the embodiment that I'm bringing forth here for you is not just about sovereignty, so to speak, in the general premise or terminology. That's a part of it, but it is your unique sovereignty. And that's where the majestic aspect aspect of this comes in. That's where, as I've talked in other segments, the higher embodiment of Christ, which also uniquely individualizes that expression within your majestic template, your new DNA, you truly being a new creation. So again, being on the sovereign one's path as it relates to your purpose will still confine you into what the old traditional system is, where the purposes still look the same. Where it's taking hard level extractions and longer processes for you to come into what's supposed to be a greater expansion, your promised land, so to speak. But if you pay attention, even biblically, what was happening with the Israelites and even the leader Moses? Moses never made it into the promised land. And generations didn't make it. And why is this? Now, most of it is because of their own resistance and rebellion, and Moses misinterpreting his assignment and feeling obligated to stay with them to bring them over. He believed it was his job to cross them over. It was his job to lead them out, to lead them out. And yes, was he part of the crossover initiative to help them get into the promised land? Absolutely. But he started misinterpreting his assignment. And then he got caught in the trap, in the loop, and then they're now running the show. The reason why this is important is because you have to be mindful and awake to what's consistently emerging, or you will, quote unquote, miss it. For sure. He did not extend or expand, I should say, deepen his relationship with the Lord. He got on autopilot within the wilderness, the wandering, the looping, the stagnanticity, giving the illusion of moving forward. Actually not. Because not really tuning into what is the next level. Instead of, this was the original assignment, here's what I'm doing. I went and got this, I presented this, the people are in rebellion. And I have teachings on this particular topic here, where if Moses would have been tuning in to what the next level was, he would have realized that he could have just started continuously moving forward, and whoever was coming, and whoever wasn't, they were just going to be left there. And the reason why you know that he missed a season or a couple of seasons where God was actually trying to invite him into a newer awareness is because when it came time for him to speak to the rock instead of striking the rock, he was in his routine, he was in his pattern, and he got frustrated because things had not been working out. And the children of Israel, no matter what signs and wonders had been shown and demonstrated, he was getting frustrated. And when it was time for him to do something different, even though the communication from God was coming to him to do it, he was in his patterns and he couldn't. He could have, but he didn't. But God doesn't just show up and just say, okay, do this way. There is a period of time where he is always introducing. It's how the Bible says that wisdom is always crying out in the street, raises her voice in the marketplace. Why is she raising her voice? Why is she crying out? Metaphorically, wisdom. Yeah. Because people aren't getting it. They aren't listening. They aren't waking up. And sometimes by the time they do start to get some aha around it, there's so much that's already taking place and so much momentum that has ensued. So that's one of the reasons why Moses couldn't make the shift himself to get into the promised land and couldn't move others. So you have individuals that came out of slavery, but they didn't do the work in order to become new creations that would then help them to move into the promised land. Now, again, I'm not knocking content that is out there, but this is in direct correlation. It's because some of the influencers and channels that are sharing, even if it's in AI format or so, just the content being produced, is still more like a Moses leadership in a sense that's not actually helping you to cross over. It's helping you to wander. Keep going around. You need one more thing. You need something else. This is the final thing before you're just not ready. Well, how much more ready do you need to be? This is where you will get pushed up against the wall, in a sense. And this is a divine pushing, a divine interruption, a divine disruption. This is how much more of this are you going to take before you wake up and realize you are long past this. And even the works that you believe you're here to do, what you believe that you're prepared for, you are long past this. And it's time to shift into the new. And you'll be shown what to do with what you have been or had been prepared for. But there's something so much more. So again, it's time to stop going down the chosen one's purpose path. Again, it is a trap. You are trapping yourself. It's time to raise up. Wake up first. And then sovereign up. Because you can't effectively level up if you don't, in fact, sovereign up. And that's the new emergence for you during this time. And as always, I invite you to check the description because I do have resources. I'm not here just to empower you or to make you aware and not actually have something that can help you expand more of what's already coming forth from you. And once this series has concluded, it will be up to you, of course, to go back and consistently listen to it, to ground and anchor. But then it's time for you to now use that as a launching pad for what's coming next. It will not be the same thing over and over again. Our lives are a series of events, and sometimes it is up to us how long we stay in certain seasons. We're in a new time, in a new era, where our developmental processes are not the same as before. And when you shift into sovereignty in this way, again, you will have more creative authority as a creator in how things play out. And it will be the divine will playing out through you. So I'm going to bring this rendering to a close. And I'm so super proud of each of you because I can feel your authority rising. And you know that it's time. And there's nothing more I need to say right now. With that being said, I'm going to send you away with many blessings. Looking forward to being back with you soon. Take care and stay blessed.